are not persuasive. They're not effective. Last week during the hearing, it was striking. Not a single Democrat asked any questions that defended the far left's view of religious liberty, which is that the Supreme Court should go through the public square, scour the public square to remove any reference to God Almighty. Not a single Democrat defended the far left's radical view of religious liberty, that the government has the power to punish you for living out your faith. I noticed these lovely photographs in the place where our Democratic colleagues normally would be. You know, one photograph I don't see is a photograph of the Little Sisters of the Poor. The Little Sisters of the Poor, a Catholic convent of nuns who've taken a vow of poverty, who the Obama administration persecuted because they were living according to their religious faith, and who Joe Biden pledges to once again persecute if he is elected. Not a single Democrat in this committee defended that radical view of religious liberty because the American people don't want it. They want a court that will actually protect our religious liberty, not take it away. Not a single Democrat during the hearing last week defended the Democrats' radical view of free speech, which is that the federal government has the authority to regulate political speech, to regulate your free speech, and to silence you if you dare criticize a politician. That is a terrifying increase in government power. There have been 4 votes on the left for that proposition, that the federal government has the power to ban movies, that the federal government has the power to ban books. That was the position of the 4 dissenters in Citizens United, and not a single Democrat would defend that radical proposition because the American people have no interest in a federal government that has the power to regulate free speech. On the Second Amendment, not a single Democrat defended the proposition that 4 dissenters in Heller versus District of Columbia maintained, which is that the Second Amendment protects no individual right to keep and bear arms whatsoever. Which means that government can make it a crime, a felony for any American to own a firearm, and there's nothing you can do to challenge it in court. There are 4 votes for that. 1 vote away. Not a one of them defends that radical proposition. And so I would say to all of us in the majority, we should take solace from this. They know the propositions they're advancing are radical, they are extreme, they're not what the American people want. To all of the grassroots activists who are out there fighting right now, less than 2 weeks away from Election Day, fighting to defend the Constitution and Bill of Rights, take solace in the fact that our absent Democrats understand last week was not going well for them. They tried to ask a few questions of Judge Barrett, and they realized this ain't good. The American people seeing this smart, calm, talented, principled jurist pledging to defend the Constitution, that is a problem for us, the Democrats. And by day 2 of the questioning, they had gotten out of Dodge. By midday, there were only 2 Democrats even left in the hearing room. Now, of course, 2 Democrats is more than we have here today. So it went from barely being present to being totally absent. There's a reason why Joe Biden and Kamala Harris refused to answer the question whether they intend to pack the court, because the answer is yes. If they get power, they will move to pack the court, to expand the number of justices, to fill it with partisans, an abuse of power that would do immense damage to the independence of the judiciary. And why won't they answer the question? Because they know it is profoundly unpopular. They know the American people don't want to see the court politicized, its independence destroyed, which is what today's Senate Democrats are pushing. The stakes of this confirmation and the stakes of this election coming up in 2 weeks are enormous. The reason the Democrats want to see leftists on the court is so that a majority of judges, unelected lawyers in robes, can mandate policy outcomes that the American people don't want, that they would never vote for, without our colleagues having to take responsibility for it. There are times when it seems Republican senators don't necessarily understand that the principles we're fighting for, the overwhelming majority of the American people are with us. But you know who understands that very well? The Senate Democrats who refuse to attend today. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cruz, for your participation in this hearing process. You bring a lot to the table for the conservative point of view and actually understand the process as well as anybody I've ever met. And thank you, Senator Lee, for reminding us how we got here. We got here through a tortured tale of abusing people, of trying to get outcomes, changing the rules to accommodate political desires, and it's ended today. I would love to go back to the traditional Senate approach of having to grab some people on the other side of the aisle to confirm a judge, but that was abandoned in 2013 for a purpose, to stack the D.C. Court of Appeals. That's where all litigation involving the federal government goes. And Senator Schumer and Senator Reid, to his credit, says, I did it, I'd do it again, and we should change the legislative filibuster. That's where Senator Harry Reid's at. I'm hoping that this election, people will listen to what Senator Cruz just said. We are one vote away from fundamentally changing the Second Amendment, changing how free speech works in this country, and on and on and on. So when they changed the rules in 2013 and filibustered Justice Gorsuch, requiring us to change the rules, it set in motion some things that I've worried about for a long time. But here's some good news. The Judiciary Committee got it right when it came to Judge Barrett.
The Democratic Party believes that government has an important role to play in society. It fights against economic inequality. It advocates policies that battle racial and gender discrimination. But it wasn't always this way. The Democratic Party was once the party of white supremacy, supporting slavery and the Ku Klux Klan. To understand how the party made such a huge shift, you have to go back to its origins in the mid-1820s, when it sprung up supporting the presidential candidacy of a popular former general, Andrew Jackson. Jackson was an outsider, challenging the political establishment and the elites of his day, and his critics disparaged him as a jackass. But Jackson embraced the animal as a symbol of determination, and donkeys started appearing in newspapers to represent him and his followers. In the 1828 presidential election, which saw record-breaking popular participation, Jackson won in a landslide victory. So his supporters argued that they, and not the old elites, represented the popular will of the country, and they started calling themselves the Democratic Party. Jackson's administration immediately began expelling Native Americans living east of the Mississippi River, an issue that defined the new administration. After he signed the Indian Removal Act into law in 1830, 5 large tribes were rounded up and forcibly marched into territories and camps further west. And the Democrats' ambitions didn't stop there. In the 1840s, the party adopted the doctrine.
The Democratic Party prides itself on being inclusive and advocating for communities of color. But there was a time when racism was at the center of its policies. The Democratic Party began in the early 1800s under Andrew Jackson. It was founded on the belief that democracy should be for all men, not just the elites and landowners. Well, all white men, that is. The party was more than happy for slavery to continue, and it treated Native Americans with brutal contempt. As president, Jackson enforced one of the cruelest policies in American history when he signed the Indian Removal Act into law. White people wanted to settle on Native lands, so the Democratic government uprooted Native Americans from their homelands, forcing them to travel west. More than 5,000 Natives died during this displacement, now known as the Trail of Tears.
Phyllis, how did your sons break it to you?
They walked in the door and then they sat down for a little while and then they said, we're going to join the Klan. I nearly had a fit.
The Ku Klux Klan is America's most notorious white supremacist group, and this year marks the 150th anniversary. This is also a year that's seen escalating racial violence in the US. In this turbulent climate, the Ku Klux Klan claim they're on the rise, and they're trying to appeal to the younger generation.
How old are you?
I just turned 20 in March. I'm currently still in school.
At its peak, the KKK had an estimated 5 million members. Thousands of African Americans were tortured and murdered by lynch mobs in the Ku Klux Klan. But Klan numbers declined in the 60s.
For my Klan!
I've gained rare access to spend 7 months with the traditionalist American Knights, who say they're the fastest growing KKK group in America. Some of their rituals remain unchanged.
Pretty awesome.
But they claim they've left violence behind.
We haven't killed anybody. I haven't anyway.
In this atmosphere of racial tension,
come on, KKK. You fuck around, you're gonna get fucked around.
3 members belonging to the Klan I'm filming are arrested for planning to kill a black man. I've come here to find out just who belongs to the KKK and if it really is on the rise.
The second group, in addition to the foreign-born, are Catholics, and of course these overlap because many Catholics were immigrants. They're more dangerous. In fact, the Catholics are the most dangerous. They're a foreign religion. The Klan dug up centuries of anti-Catholic propaganda. Their first loyalty was to the Church and the Vatican, not to America. They were sheep under the thumb of a foreign pope, a hierarchical clergy that was a contradiction of American democracy. Here's an image of this reams full of anti-Catholic propaganda. The top half of the cartoon is about the progress in Europe in separating church and state, with the Pope and the Catholic clergy looking on with great dismay. And Liberty, the woman in the front, proudly rending apart the church and the state. And then in the bottom half, in the United States, the Catholics are putting the church and the state back together. Some of you will be able to see the stereotype of the drunken Irish immigrant in the front, happily applauding as Lady Liberty turns away and the Catholic Church and the American state become one. Because that's what many Protestants believed, that the Catholic Church was engaged in a great conspiracy to overthrow the American government, take over the American government, that churches, Catholic churches, were stocked with ammunition in their basement for this coming struggle. People actually believed that. And then look at how they behave, these Catholics. Look at how they drink beer. Even on a Sunday they drink beer. These German American Catholics, these Irish American Catholics, and then the ones from Southern and Eastern Europe, they're even worse. These many strands came together to make Catholics the Klan's #1 enemy. Above all the other dangers and threats, it was the Catholics. Now that again is difficult to understand today. Some of you will remember the 1960 election and the anti-Catholic stuff that was slung at John F. Kennedy. It's very difficult for my younger students to understand all of that. It's almost impossible for them to understand that. But there was a deep, long anti-Catholic tradition in American history from the very beginning. The Puritans knew all about it. A reality of 1920s Protestant America.
take our future! We take their life! They take our future! We take their life!
The KKK endorses Hillary Clinton. We have given her $20,000 anonymously for her campaign fund. She is friends with the Klan. You know, a lot of people don't realize that. What, all this stuff she's saying now, she's saying so she can get into office, okay? She doesn't care about the illegal immigrants. She doesn't. She's acting like she does so she can get into office. And once she's into the office, then she'll implement her policies. She's Democrat. The Klan has always been a democratic organization.